Have you ever walked into a child's life years too late and wondered if love could still grow where silence once lived? Ethan Reed was a billionaire who had it all except a reason to come home. He'd built empires, sealed deals, made headlines. But when the woman he once loved passed away, he discovered something that shook him to the core. He had a 5-year-old son, and he had never held him, never tucked him in, never even said his name out loud. The court gave him two choices: fight for a child he barely knew, or walk away forever and let strangers raise his only son. But what if the only person who truly understood the boy was the woman Ethan had overlooked all along? If it were you, would you marry someone you didn't love, just to protect the child you never meant to have? This is a story of second chances, quiet courage, and the kind of love that isn't loud but never leaves. If this story touches something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's begin. The rain was steady that morning in Chicago. Not dramatic, just enough to blur the skyline outside Ethan Reed's penthouse window. He liked days like that, quiet, gray, reflective. The world outside felt slower, like it finally matched the pace inside his chest. Ethan, now 50, stood by the window, holding a half cup of lukewarm black coffee. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, tie undone from the night before. It was Sunday, but the man hadn't lived by calendars in years. Work ran through him like blood, constant, cold, and predictable. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He almost didn't pick up, but something made him turn back and answer. Mr. Reed. The voice was careful, practiced. This is Susan Elkins. I'm an attorney in Evanston. I'm calling on behalf of Amanda Gray. That name made his stomach clench. He hadn't heard it in nearly 6 years. She passed away. Susan continued. 3 days ago. Car accident. I'm sorry. Ethan didn't respond. His knuckles whitened around the mug. Amanda Gray, artist, soft-spoken, smart in a quiet way. They'd met during a charity fundraiser. Dated briefly, 3 months, maybe 4. It ended suddenly. She'd called him months later, saying she was pregnant. He'd dismissed it, harshly. She'd never asked again. He took a breath. I hadn't spoken to her in years, he said flatly. I know, Susan replied gently, but there's something you need to hear. Amanda had a son. His name is Liam. He's 5. Ethan felt something cold settle behind his ribs. We believe Liam is your biological son, she said. Amanda listed your name. We have some records, and a letter she wrote, just before she passed. He sat down without realizing it, the chair groaning under him. 5 years. Why now, he whispered. Why me? Because there's no one else, she said. Amanda's parents are elderly. They've filed for emergency custody, but Amanda wanted Liam to go to you. Ethan stared out the rain-dappled window, watching a single bird struggle against the wind. He remembered the day Amanda had called to say she was pregnant. He'd said it wasn't his. He'd told her to do whatever you want, then wired a sum of money large enough to erase the conversation. And she had, until now. Do you know what kind of man I am? He asked, his voice low. I don't, Susan admitted, but I know what kind of man Amanda hoped you'd become. Silence hung between them like fog. Mr. Reed. Liam's currently with his nanny. Well, more than that. A woman named Sophie Lane. She's cared for him since he was born, but legally, she has no claim. The court needs direction. Quickly. Ethan exhaled slowly. Where is he? Still in Evanston. Sophie's kept him in a small home Amanda rented, but the court may place him in temporary foster care if there's no next of kin. There was a long pause, the kind that stretches when a man realizes his life is about to turn. Ethan stood and walked to the window again. The city blurred behind glass. He'd built empires, negotiated billion-dollar deals, survived boardroom wars. But in that moment, none of it felt useful. What did he know about being someone's father? He barely remembered his own. That night, the penthouse felt different. He didn't turn on the TV. Didn't call anyone. He read the short email Susan had sent the letter Amanda had written in case something happened. If Ethan ever comes for Liam, please let him know I never wanted to push him. I just hoped, one day, he might care. Her handwriting was still the same. Gentle, slanted to the left. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He stood at the window, watching the rain until morning. The drive to Evanston took 45 minutes, though to Ethan Reed, it felt longer. The early morning sky was low and colorless, the highway soaked in a cold November mist. His driver offered to take him, but Ethan refused. He needed to be alone. He pulled up outside a small, two-story house with peeling white paint and a swing on the front porch. The kind of house that had seen better decades, but still held warmth like a photograph yellowed by time but never thrown away. He wasn't used to places like this. A woman opened the door before he could knock. Her hair was tied in a low bun, sweater sleeves pushed up, hands dusted with flour. "Mr. Reed?" she asked, cautious but not afraid. "I'm Sophie Lane." She didn't offer her hand, just stepped aside, allowing him in with a quiet nod. The air inside smelled like cinnamon and something baking. A children's book lay open on the couch, its pages marked by a blue crayon. "Where's Liam?" Ethan asked, his voice low. "Napping," she said, glancing toward the hallway. "We've had a hard few days." He followed her into a small kitchen, where a tea kettle hissed on the stove. The table was worn, but clean. A stuffed dinosaur sat in one of the chairs, wearing a paper crown. "He doesn't know I'm coming?" "Does he?" Ethan asked. Sophie shook her head. "No. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't wake him just yet. He doesn't..." "Adjust quickly?" Ethan nodded stiffly. "You were Amanda's nanny." "Not exactly. I was Liam's." She said, "From the day he was born, she poured tea for herself, none for him. He didn't ask." "Amanda trusted you," Ethan said, studying her. "Why didn't she leave him with her parents?" Sophie's gaze met his. "Because she knew they'd try to erase him," she said plainly. "They never wanted her to keep the baby. They saw him as a mistake." Ethan looked down. He knew that tone. It had once been his, too. He leaned back in the chair, the weight of 5 years pressing down. "I didn't believe her," he admitted. "I thought she wanted something from me." "She didn't," Sophie said simply. "She just wanted you to know. But when you pushed her away..." She stopped hoping. Silence filled the space between them. The only sound came from the ticking clock above the fridge. "Did he ever ask about me?" Ethan finally asked. Sophie shook her head. "Not by name. He knows he doesn't have a dad, but he's never said it aloud." That hurt more than Ethan expected. "He's quiet, thoughtful." she continued. He's scared of thunder, loves blueberries, and won't sleep without his dinosaur. He doesn't like loud voices or sudden touches. Ethan stared at the tea kettle, wondering how much he'd missed and why it still wasn't too late to try. Sophie studied him for a moment. "Why are you here now?" she asked gently. He didn't have an answer, not one that would sound right. So he told the truth. "Because I can't stop thinking about him, about what it means. If he really is my son." She looked at him differently then, not softer, but not as guarded. A small sound broke the stillness, a creak, then footsteps down the hall. Liam appeared in the doorway, barefoot in dinosaur pajamas, holding a blanket and blinking sleepily. He had Amanda's eyes. Ethan's breath caught. The boy looked at Sophie first, then at Ethan. He said nothing. Ethan didn't know what to do with his hands, or his face, or his voice. "Hi," he said, awkwardly. I'm Ethan." Liam looked at him, head tilted slightly. He didn't speak, just shuffled closer to Sophie and slid his tiny hand into hers. Sophie smiled softly and crouched beside him. "This is a friend," she said. "He's here to meet you." Liam stared at Ethan for a long moment. Then, without a word, he turned and walked to the table, climbing into the chair with the stuffed dinosaur. He placed the crown gently back on its head. "He doesn't talk much," Sophie whispered. "But he listens to everything." Ethan nodded. "He's beautiful," he murmured. Sophie blinked, surprised. "Yes, he is, for the next hour." Ethan stayed. He didn't ask questions, didn't try to explain. He just watched. Liam colored quietly at the table. Occasionally, he glanced up at Ethan. Not fearfully, just curiously. Before he left, Ethan knelt beside him. "I'd like to see you again," he said. Liam didn't speak, but he handed Ethan the blue crayon. It was the closest thing to permission. Outside, the sky had cleared. A single ray of sunlight cut through the gray. It wasn't much, but it was something. As Ethan stepped into his car, he closed his fist around the crayon like it was fragile, like it meant something. Because it did. Ethan Reed returned the next day, just after noon. He brought no assistant, no suit, no agenda, only a small paper bag with 2 blueberry muffins and a half-folded children's book he found in a box labeled Amanda's Things. Sophie Lane opened the door, wearing the same gray cardigan. There was flour on her jeans again. A calm, lived-in kind of woman. The kind who didn't try to impress, but somehow did. She tilted her head when she saw him. "Twice in 2 days," she said, not unkindly. "That's a record." Ethan offered her the bag. "These are for Liam," he said. "And maybe a peace offering for you." Sophie took the bag, but didn't smile. "He's out back, playing with chalk." Ethan followed her through the house and out onto the porch. The backyard was small, fenced, with a maple tree that had shed most of its leaves. Liam knelt near the edge of the concrete, drawing crooked shapes in blue and green. Ethan didn't speak, just watched. "He likes the quiet," Sophie said. "Doesn't do well with noise or crowds." Ethan nodded. "I don't either." Sophie gave him a look, not judgment, just observation, like she was still deciding who he was. They sat on the steps in silence for a while. Then Ethan asked the question he'd been circling since yesterday. "Why did you stay?" Sophie brushed hair from her face, thinking. The wind moved through the bare branches above them because Amanda needed someone. And then Liam needed someone more. But you didn't have to. You weren't family. Family isn't always blood, she said quietly. Sometimes it's who doesn't leave. Ethan looked out at Liam. The boy was now drawing lines from the sidewalk to the base of the tree, connecting the ground to the roots, like he was trying to give the tree legs. What was she like? He asked suddenly. Amanda Sophie smiled faintly. Gentle. A little scattered. She could never keep track of her keys, but she remembered every birthday, every tooth Liam lost, every doctor's appointment. She paused. She loved that boy more than anything. Ethan swallowed hard. Did she talk about me? Sophie hesitated. Only once. After you sent the money and didn't respond to her last letter. She cried, but she never said a bad word about you. She should have. Maybe. But she said something that stuck with me. She said, I don't want Liam to grow up hating someone he's never met. So she just let it go. Ethan didn't speak for a long time. A breeze passed through the yard, carrying the scent of the muffins still warm in the bag beside him. You've given up a lot, he said finally. To stay? Sophie turned toward him. I didn't give up anything that mattered. That answer hit something deep in him, all his life. Ethan had chased things that looked like worth money, legacy, respect. He'd never once stopped to ask himself what mattered. Liam called out softly from the yard, Miss Sophie, I need more blue. Sophie stood, brushed off her jeans, and fetched the chalk tin. When she returned, Ethan was still watching her, curious now, but not just about Liam. About her. You don't seem afraid of me, he said. Should I be? Most people are. Or at least cautious. Sophie handed the chalk to Liam and returned to the step beside Ethan. I used to work with children who had trauma, she said. They taught me that loud isn't always strong, and quiet isn't always weak. Ethan looked down at his hands. What does Liam think of me? He doesn't know you. Not yet. Do you think I could ever be a father to him? Sophie's eyes softened. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said something he wasn't prepared to hear. That depends on whether you're here because of guilt or because you're ready to stay. That night, Ethan didn't go back to the penthouse. He sat in the backyard until Liam finished his drawing, until Sophie turned on the porch light and said softly, It's bedtime. As they walked back inside, Ethan glanced at the drawing. A big tree, a little boy, a stick figure in a tie, and a woman with long hair and a smile. All four standing in the same box of green. The call came the next morning. Ethan had just poured his coffee black, as always, when his cell buzzed across the counter. It was Susan Elkins, the attorney. Mr. Reed, I just got off the phone with the family court, she said. Amanda's parents filed an emergency petition for custody. The hearing is in 2 days. Ethan stood in silence, his hand tightening around the coffee mug. They're arguing that you're not a stable guardian, she continued. No marital partner, no parenting history. And your prior rejection of paternity doesn't help? He exhaled, long and slow. They're right. On paper, maybe. But paper doesn't raise children. People do. Susan paused. But here's what matters now. The judge is going to look at Liam's current environment. If you want any chance of keeping custody, you need to show you can offer him a home, a real one, stable, safe. I can give him everything. Ethan said, security, education, healthcare, my name. He doesn't need your name. He needs a family. She hesitated. Are you willing to build one that evening? Ethan found himself standing outside Sophie's house again, this time with purpose. She opened the door, wearing a soft green sweater and a tired look. He's asleep, she said. Rough day. It's not about him. It's about us. Sophie didn't move, but she didn't close the door either. Come in, she said finally. He stepped into the familiar quiet, the smell of apples and soap, the hum of a dishwasher in the next room. Ethan sat at the kitchen table while Sophie poured herself tea. She didn't offer him any. He didn't blame her. The court date is set. He said, Amanda's parents are coming for Liam. Sophie didn't respond. They've built a strong case, he added. I've got wealth, but no family. They say I've never raised a child, never shown interest before. And they're not wrong. Sophie sat across from him. She looked exhausted. So what are you asking? Ethan. He folded his hands, the words weighing more than he expected. Will you marry me? The air shifted. Even the hum of the dishwasher seemed to still. Sophie blinked once, then again. What not? Not for love, he said quickly. Not right now. Anyway, for Liam, for the court, to prove he has a home, a mother, a father, a family. Her face didn't change. That, somehow, was worse. You want me to marry you, so you can win a custody battle? Yes, Ethan admitted. No, God, I don't know. I want to protect him, and you're the only person who's ever truly done that. Ethan, she began. I'm not asking for romance, he said. I'm asking for a chance to be what I should have been years ago. Silence. She stood up, walked to the sink, poured out her tea. He watched her in that quiet, aching stillness, the kind that follows after a deep breath, before a hard decision. Finally, she turned around. This isn't a game, she said. Marriage isn't a box you check off on a court form. Liam doesn't need performance. He needs permanence. I know, he said. But he also needs to stay with you, and I can't keep him here. Without you. Sophie looked away, her eyes full, but not yet falling. What happens when you win when it's over? Then we figure it out, Ethan said honestly. I'll give you an out, a timeline, whatever you need. But Sophie, don't do it for me. Do it for him. She leaned on the counter, hands trembling slightly. You think I haven't thought about this? She whispered. Every day since Amanda died, I've waited for the knock on the door. I've imagined Liam taken away by strangers. I've dreamed of courtrooms and custody forms and cold men in suits. And now you're that man. Those words hurt because they were true. But you're also the one who stayed, she added, barely audible. Then she looked at him fully. One condition, she said. Ethan sat straighter. You don't fake it with him, she said. You show up. You do the bedtime stories. The medicine, the nightmares, all of it. No assistants, no staff. Done, he said immediately. And with me, she added. No pretending to be something we're not. If this is a legal arrangement, we keep it honest, transparent, agreed, he said. Sophie closed her eyes. Then yes, that night, they sat on the porch in silence. Inside, Liam slept with his stuffed dinosaur tucked under his chin. Outside, two grown adults quietly signed the beginning of something that wasn't quite love, but maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something more honest. They were married on a Wednesday. No church, no flowers, no family, just two signatures at the county courthouse. A quiet clerk in a too big blazer, and a moment that passed without confetti or applause. Sophie Lane wore a navy blue dress and her hair in a low bun. Ethan Reed wore a dark suit, no tie, no cufflinks, no pretense. Liam held Sophie's hand during the signing. He didn't understand what was happening. But when Ethan reached for his other hand, the boy didn't pull away. That was something. They moved into Ethan's lakeside home in Winnetka a week later. Not the penthouse in Chicago. Too cold, too tall, too lonely. Sophie needed light. Liam needed space. And Ethan needed both of them close enough to hear their footsteps. The house had 5 bedrooms, a quiet backyard, and a kitchen that hadn't seen a homemade meal in years. That first week was full of new sounds. The clatter of Sophie's cooking utensils, Liam's small feet running across hardwood, laughter, soft, occasional, real. It was also full of silence. The kind of silence that comes from 2 adults sharing a roof, a child, and a marriage neither of them could name. On a Thursday morning, Sophie found Ethan in the kitchen at 6 away. Staring blankly at a frying pan. Trying to cook, she asked, amused. Trying to locate scrambled eggs in theory. He said, so far, unsuccessful. She took the pan gently and cracked 3 eggs in one smooth motion. Let me guess, she said. You haven't cooked a meal since college. More like, since 1997, he admitted. You were 30 in 1997. Exactly. She handed him the whisk. Start now. They stood side by side as the eggs turned from liquid to gold. It wasn't love, but it was something warmer than silence. Liam had a bedtime routine that Sophie protected like sacred ground. Bath at 7:15. Pajamas. One story. Then quiet music and lights dimmed low. On Ethan's second night in the house, she handed him the book. Your turn, she said. He stared at the cover. The little engine that could. A story he hadn't heard since his own father left. Ethan sat beside Liam's bed, unsure of how loud to speak or where to pause. Halfway through, Liam turned his body toward him, blanket curled beneath his chin. By the last page, the boy was asleep, breathing softly, his hand resting lightly on Ethan's arm. Ethan didn't move for a long time. Something inside him did. Later that night, Sophie stood on the back porch, arms crossed against the October chill. Ethan joined her with 2 mugs of tea. Hers had honey. His, black. He likes you, she said softly. He doesn't know me. Kids don't fake comfort. They looked out at the backyard together. The maple tree was shedding faster now. A leaf landed on the table beside them. Ethan reached for it absently. It's strange, he said. I've closed deals bigger than most people's lifetime earnings. I've spoken in rooms full of CEOs, presidents, but reading that book tonight, he shook his head. I've never been more nervous. Sophie smiled faintly. That means it mattered. On Saturday, Sophie invited him to join them at the park. Just a normal morning, she said. Ethan wore jeans. Real ones, not designer. He carried the snacks in a paper bag like a man who'd done it before. Liam chased leaves, climbed the small jungle gym, pointed at dogs. No one took pictures. No one posted a thing. It was real life. And it startled Ethan with its softness. But there were missteps, too. One night, Liam woke from a nightmare screaming, disoriented. Ethan rushed in, panicked, unsure whether to touch him or call for Sophie. She arrived moments later, knelt beside the boy, murmured something Ethan didn't catch. Liam calmed within minutes. Ethan sat on the floor afterward, ashamed. "He doesn't trust me?" he whispered. "He doesn't know you yet," Sophie said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But you came. That's the first thing he'll remember." On the 10th night, Ethan asked the question he hadn't dared say aloud. "Do you think we're doing this right?" Sophie looked at him from across the table. The dishwasher hummed behind them. "There is no right," she said. "There's only showing up and trying again tomorrow." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll be here tomorrow." Their marriage wasn't love, not yet. There were no kisses, no shared bed, no whispered promises in the dark, but there were clean dishes, folded towels, a boy who laughed more this week than the last. There was, for the first time in years, hope, fragile, quiet, but undeniably there. There are moments that don't feel like a break until later, when the silence sounds different. It began on a Tuesday. Ethan had just finished a call with Susan Elkins. The court date was approaching. She was cautiously optimistic. "A strong guardian narrative," she said. "You've done well these last few weeks. But remember, the court sees the whole picture, not just snapshots." Ethan hung up, hopeful but uneasy. He walked into the living room, where Liam was quietly assembling blocks into careful towers. Sophie sat nearby, reading. Something about the scene made Ethan pause. It felt normal. And that's when he heard it. Sophie. On the phone, soft voice, private tone. "No, I haven't decided yet," she said. "Maybe once the hearing's over, I'll find my own place, just until things settle." Her back was to him. She didn't know he was there. Ethan froze. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles above him. She's planning to leave. He told himself he shouldn't be surprised. This was the deal. This wasn't love. This was a contract. A convenience. Still, something in his chest tightened with each turn of the fan blade. The next day, he tried to act normal, but it came out sideways. During dinner, he corrected Sophie sharply when she misread Liam's cue for no more carrots. Later, he forgot the bath time order and spilled shampoo in Liam's eyes. Sophie didn't say anything, but her silence spoke in full paragraphs. That Friday, it broke. They were folding laundry together, something quiet, something steady. Ethan finally asked, "Were you planning to tell me Sophie looked up?" "Tell you what, that you're moving out. After the hearing." She blinked, then set down a towel. "You were listening. I walked in. I didn't know I needed to knock in my own house." She sighed. "It wasn't a decision, just something I'm holding on to. A door I might need. A door out." "Ethan. So this is still temporary," he said, voice rising. "We're just waiting for the legal stamp so you can pack your things and disappear." "No. But I need to know I have a choice." "And Liam?" he asked. "Do he get a choice? Does he get another goodbye?" That stopped her. "You think I don't care about him. I think you care about not getting hurt." Ethan said, bitterly. Which is why you keep one foot out the door. Sophie's voice dropped. And you built an entire life behind a door no one could open. That hit deeper than she knew. They stood there, two people wrapped in towels and anger. Liam wandered in, dragging his dinosaur by the tail. Bed, he asked softly. Neither adult spoke for a moment. Then Sophie crouched and scooped him into her arms. Yeah, baby, she whispered. Bed. She didn't look back at Ethan. The next few days passed like a cold draft through a warm house barely visible, but always felt. Sophie spoke kindly, but briefly. Ethan became efficient, mechanical in his routines. Liam noticed. He spoke less, clung more, cried in his sleep again. It was Sophie who comforted him. And Ethan who watched from the hallway, fists clenched, heart heavy. On Sunday, Ethan received a manila envelope in the mail unmarked, save for a return address in Vermont. Inside old photographs of Amanda and Liam. And a letter. Ethan opened it at the kitchen table. Alone. Dear Ethan, if this ever reaches you, it means something happened. I hope it didn't. But if it did know this, I tried. I tried to make peace with you. I tried to raise our son the best I could. You didn't want to be involved, and I respected that. But Liam deserved better than silence. If there's any part of you that still remembers who you were when I met you, the man who saw beauty in quiet things, then be that man for him. He doesn't need perfect. He needs real. Amanda's handwriting was careful, like she knew it mattered more this time. That night. Ethan stood outside Sophie's door. He didn't knock, just stood there, trying to breathe. He heard her moving inside, folding sheets, humming something soft. He almost walked away. But instead, he whispered more to himself than the door. I want to be real. The following morning, Sophie found him asleep on the couch, a blanket over him, but no pillow. A photo of Amanda and Liam resting beside his hand. She didn't wake him, just stood there, watching the man she had agreed to marry, out of duty, out of care, out of something that hadn't yet found its name. Later that day, as she made breakfast, Sophie glanced toward the couch again. You said something last night, she said quietly. Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. Did I? You said you wanted to be real? He looked at her. Really looked. I still do. She nodded, then stopped looking for the exit. The attic smelled like cedar and forgotten time. It had started with a search for Liam's winter coat. Ethan had opened one box, then another. The third was different. An old cardboard one sealed with silver tape, and Amanda's handwriting on the lid, Liam's firsts. He sat down on the wooden floor, dust rising around him like memory smoke. Inside, there were the usual things, tiny socks, a worn pacifier, a drawing that looked like scribbled stars. But beneath that, something caught his breath. A letter and a flash drive. The letter was folded in thirds. The outside read, For Ethan, if he ever comes. He opened it with a kind of reverence he didn't understand until his hands began to shake. Ethan, I don't know if you'll ever find this. I told myself not to write it. But some part of me hopes that one day, maybe, you'll want to know the truth. You thought I kept Liam from you. But the truth is, I nearly lost him more than once. At 6 months, he had a seizure. We were alone. I panicked. I thought I was going to lose him, and I didn't know what to do. I called Sophie. She was the one who saved him. She stayed up with us for nights. She held him when I couldn't breathe. She called the doctors. She kept me from falling apart. She's not just a nanny. She's the reason he's alive. I wanted to tell you. But how could I explain all the years that passed in silence? How could I ask you to care about a child when you didn't believe he was yours? Still, I hoped, always hoped, that you'd come around, that maybe, if you saw him, something in you would shift. If you're reading this, it means something did. And if you're wondering who to trust with his heart, trust her. Amanda Ethan's hands fell to his lap. He didn't cry, not yet. But something cracked open quietly, without sound. He plugged in the flash drive. The screen lit up with grainy video. Amanda's voice. She was younger, tired, smiling through it. Liam lay sleeping in her arms. Sophie sat beside her, holding a bottle, adjusting a blanket. Ethan, Amanda said to the camera, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but this is the moment I realized I couldn't do it alone. She looked at Sophie, who didn't know she was being filmed. She never left. Even when I had nothing to pay her. Even when I screamed and broke down and begged for sleep. She stayed. Amanda turned the camera briefly toward herself. You didn't want to be part of this. I forgave that. But if you ever do want to come back, please, don't overlook her. Don't mistake her quiet for weakness. She's more family than most blood I've known. The video ended there. Just a soft fade to black. Ethan sat still for a long time. He remembered the bitterness, the pride, the night he'd transferred money and closed the chapter before it had begun. And here, now inside this dusty box, was the truth he hadn't earned, but had been gifted anyway. He stood slowly, took the letter and flash drive, and walked downstairs. Sophie was in the kitchen, stirring soup. Liam was on the floor with a puzzle. Ethan didn't say anything. He just placed the letter on the counter and sat down across from her. Sophie looked up, startled. She read the handwriting, then met his eyes. You found it? I wasn't looking for it, he said quietly, but I think I was meant to. She sat down. Slowly, I should have told you about the seizure, about all of it. Why didn't you? Sophie looked at her hands. Because I didn't want to make you feel like you owed me something. I just wanted to keep him safe. And I didn't know if you'd believe me. Ethan swallowed hard. I didn't, he said, but I do now. There was a silence that felt heavier than anger and softer than sorrow. Amanda trusted you, he added, not just with Liam, with me. Sophie's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I never meant for this to be complicated, she said. It's not complicated, Ethan replied. It's just human. That night, Ethan tucked Liam into bed. The boy had learned to say goodnight now, whispered it like a secret, only safe with Ethan. Afterward, Ethan returned to the kitchen where Sophie was drying dishes. I want to ask you something, he said. She turned, drying her hands on a towel. Okay. If this had been real, he paused. If we weren't married for the court, just living life, day by day. Would you have stayed? Sophie looked down for a long moment, then met his eyes. Yes, she said. Ethan nodded. Then maybe we start over. Not all at once, but for real this time. She walked over to him, slow and careful. You're not the man I met. He agreed. I'm better now. Because of you. Because of him. Sophie smiled, tears finally falling. Then yes. Ethan, let's start. The knock came on a crisp Monday morning. Sophie was folding Liam's pajamas in the laundry room. Ethan was in the kitchen, brewing coffee. Liam, still in his socks, was pushing a wooden train across the living room floor. The knock was sharp, precise, unmistakably official. Ethan opened the door and came face to face with a woman in a slate gray blazer, clipboard in hand, expression set in stone. Mr. Reed, she asked. I'm Janet Mallory, court-appointed evaluator. I believe we're scheduled for an in-home visit this morning. Ethan blinked. He had nearly forgotten. Yes, of course. Please. Come in. She stepped over the threshold, gaze scanning every corner. The shelves, the floor, the lighting, the child. Liam looked up, confused. Sophie appeared from the hallway and immediately recognized the posture, the voice, the air of judgment. She had seen it before in social workers, school district staff, case managers. The way professionals with checklists sometimes miss the soul of a room. Is this the child's caregiver, Ms.? Mallory asked, motioning toward Sophie. This is my wife, Ethan replied. The evaluator looked up, pen pausing over the form. I see. And how long have you been married? 3 weeks, Ethan said. But we've been raising Liam together since Amanda passed. There was a flicker in the woman's brow. She did not smile. Let's begin. The visit was quiet but intense. Ms. Mallory sat with Liam at the table, asking basic questions. Favorite color? Favorite food? Favorite person? Liam answered softly, without looking up. Miss Sophie, he said. Ethan, standing nearby, felt something warm and sharp move through his chest. The evaluator scribbled notes. Then she turned to Ethan. Can you describe your typical day with the child? Ethan nodded, though the words came slower than his boardroom speeches. I wake him up around 7. Sophie and I take turns with breakfast. I drive him to his preschool, pick him up most days. We read at night. I try to keep the routine steady. Do you discipline him? We don't raise our voices, Ethan said. We redirect. We talk. Ms. Mallory raised an eyebrow. And have there been incidents? He had a nightmare 2 weeks ago. I wasn't sure how to calm him. Sophie stepped in. I watched. I learned. There was a pause as the pen stopped. Thank you for your honesty, she said. Then she looked at Sophie. And do you intend to stay involved after the hearing? Sophie hesitated. Ethan turned toward her. This was the moment. She looked the evaluator squarely in the eye. I'm not here out of duty, she said. This isn't a job. Liam is family. And Ethan is my husband. The air hung still for a beat. Ethan's eyes dropped not in shame, but in awe. Because in that moment, she had claimed him too. After the evaluator left, silence returned to the house. Ethan sat at the table, head in his hands. Sophie placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You did fine. She doesn't like me, he muttered. She doesn't see who I'm trying to become. Sophie knelt beside him. She doesn't need to like you, Ethan. She just needs to see that Liam is safe and loved. What if she doesn't? Then we fight harder. Liam wandered into the kitchen, holding a toy train in one hand and a sock puppet in the other. Dada, he asked. Ethan looked up. His throat tightened. What did you say? Liam smiled shyly. Dada. He handed the train to Ethan like it was a gift, and Ethan, for the first time in his life, felt worthy of the word. He reached out with trembling hands, pulling Liam into his arms, behind them. Sophie watched, eyes shining, heart full. She had not just helped him win custody, she had helped him become someone deserving of it. The courtroom was colder than Ethan expected, not by temperature, but by tone. Sterile walls, pale light, chairs lined in rows like an empty theater. No comfort, no warmth, just judgment. Sophie sat beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Liam wasn't allowed in the room. Susan Elkins had arranged for him to stay with a counselor nearby. It won't be long, she had promised, but it will feel longer. Ethan nodded now as Susan straightened her files, smoothing the top page with slow precision. Across the aisle sat Gerald and Margaret Gray, Amanda's parents, the boys' biological grandparents. Their lawyer wore a navy suit and a face that didn't blink. The bailiff called the case number. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then the hearing began. The first part was procedural records, custody filings, visitation history. Ethan barely heard it. He kept his eyes on the judge's face, searching for any flicker of empathy. Then came testimony. The Grays spoke first. "We are simply trying to protect our grandson," Margaret Gray said, voice trembling. "He is 5 years old. He needs stability, tradition. He needs people who knew his mother, and he needs to be raised in a proper home," Gerald added, "not by a billionaire who never claimed him until it was convenient." The lawyer nodded, letting their words hang in the room like smoke. Ethan kept his hands still. Then Susan stood. "Your Honor," she began, "no one questions that the Grays love Liam. But this is not about who loves the child. It's about what's best for him. Mr. Reed has taken legal responsibility. He has provided a safe, structured home. He is not asking to erase the past, only to honor it by stepping into the role he once failed to fill." The judge raised an eyebrow. "In the recent marriage," he asked. "Convenience." Sophie stood. The courtroom quieted. "Your Honor," she said softly, but clearly, "we didn't marry for show. We married because Liam needed more than a contract. He needed a family." "Are you in love?" the judge asked, not unkindly. There was a pause. Then Ethan stood beside her. "Not yet," he said honestly. "But I respect her. I trust her. And I learn from her every day. I believe love can grow. But more than that, Liam already loves her. And now, he's learning to love me. And what about you?" The judge turned to Sophie. Sophie looked at Ethan, then back. "He's not who he was," she said. "He's better. For Liam, for himself. I wouldn't have stayed otherwise." There was silence. The judge looked down, scribbled something, then turned pages. "Court will recess. Final ruling in 24 hours. The gavel struck once. Outside. The air felt too sharp. Autumn had begun turning to winter. Ethan exhaled for the first time in hours. That was brutal, he muttered. Sophie looked up at him. "You told the truth," she said. "That's more than most people ever do in that room." He reached for her hand. "Whatever happens, thank you." She gripped it firmly. "We're not done yet." That evening, Liam ran into Ethan's arms as they returned home. "Dada," he said, holding up a crooked drawing. Stick figures, a tree, a house, 3 smiling people, holding hands. Ethan crouched down and smiled. Is that us? Liam nodded. This is you. This is me. And this, he pointed, is Mommy Sophie. Ethan looked at Sophie across the room. Her eyes filled again. Mommy Sophie, she whispered. The next morning, the courtroom was quiet again. Everyone stood as the judge returned. He did not look up right away. Just read from his notes. In review of all testimony, I find compelling evidence of active and stable guardianship by Mr. Ethan Reed and Mrs. Sophie Lane Reed. While the marriage is recent, the environment described by court evaluator Janet Mallory, combined with testimony and the child's developmental responses, suggest attachment and stability are already present. Therefore, legal custody shall be awarded to Mr. and Mrs. Reed, effective immediately. There was a gasp. Ethan closed his eyes. Sophie's hand found his. Margaret Gray wept softly in the back. The gavel fell again. Outside, the sky was blue for the first time in days. Sophie wrapped her coat tighter around her. It's done, she said. Ethan turned toward her. It's just begun. Then, for the first time not out of duty, not out of obligation, he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't passion, it was presence, and she didn't flinch. She closed her eyes and kissed him back. There was no parade, no champagne, no flashing cameras, just a quiet ride home in the back seat of Susan's car, with Liam asleep between them, one small hand resting in each of theirs. Ethan looked out the window as the trees passed gold to bare, October fading into November. He exhaled slowly. It's strange, he said softly. Winning doesn't feel like a finish line. Sophie glanced at him, her voice low. That's because it's not. That evening, after Liam was tucked in and the house dimmed to its softest version, Ethan poured 2 mugs of tea and met Sophie on the porch. They sat in silence for a while, comfortable now. He turned to her. Do you remember what you said? The first night I came here, I said a lot of things. You told me family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who doesn't leave. She smiled, faintly. You remembered? I remember everything you've said to me. A beat. And I'm not going anywhere. Weeks passed. The holidays came slowly, without rush, like the house itself had decided it needed rest. Sophie baked with Liam every Sunday. Sugar cookies, gingerbread, cinnamon twists. Ethan learned to make coffee just the way she liked it, 1 sugar, a splash of oat milk. They decorated the tree together. Ethan lifted Liam to hang the star. Liam, giggling, called it Daddy's job now. They went ice skating. Ethan fell twice. Sophie fell once on purpose, just to make him feel better. Laughter came easier. So did trust. And for the first time in Ethan's life, silence didn't feel like something to fill. It felt like peace. One night, as snow fell outside, Ethan found Sophie in the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands. Hey, he said, I've been thinking. Dangerous. I want to do something. Not because of the court. Not for Liam. For us. She raised an eyebrow. Okay. He pulled a small box from his pocket. No fanfare. No kneeling. Just the 2 of them. Beneath the glow of the stove light. Marry me again, he said. For real this time. Sophie blinked. Her hand moved to her mouth. Flour still dusted on her fingers. Ethan, no lawyers, no court, no conditions. Just love. Just this life. Just us. Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded. Yes. He slipped the simple gold band onto her finger. It fit like it had always belonged there. Months later, Ethan sold the penthouse in Chicago. He donated half the proceeds to the children's hospital Amanda once took Liam to. He converted the smallest bedroom into a reading room for Liam, painted it sky blue with white shelves full of books and wooden puzzles. He planted a garden out back. It never bloomed quite right, but it was theirs. And every morning, Sophie kissed him on the cheek while he made her coffee. Every night, Liam insisted on 2 stories instead of 1. And Ethan read them both. Years passed quietly, as good years do. Liam grew taller, his drawings more detailed. Sophie published a children's book based on the bedtime stories she once whispered to him. Ethan found himself speaking at fewer board meetings and attending more parent-teacher conferences. He never regretted the trade. On the anniversary of Amanda's passing, they visited her grave. Liam left a bouquet of daisies and a small drawing of their family. Stick figures, a tree, a house. But this time, they weren't holding hands. They were hugging. Sophie placed her hand on Ethan's back as he stood there, silent. "She'd be proud of you," she said. "You think so? I know so." He turned to her. "And what about you?" She smiled, eyes full. "I'm proud too, of the man you chose to become." "I didn't do it alone. No," she said. "But you chose to stay." That night, Liam crawled into their bed during a thunderstorm. Sophie wrapped an arm around him, half asleep. Ethan reached for both of them. And there, in the dark, beneath blankets and a roof he once believed too quiet for love, he finally understood. He hadn't married the nanny. He had built a life with a woman who saw the cracks in his walls and stayed long enough to help him patch them with light. A life worth staying for. A home that finally felt like one. This story reminds us that love doesn't always arrive the way we expect, neatly wrapped in romance or born from blood. Sometimes, it's found in the quiet acts, a bedtime story read with trembling hands, a cup of tea shared in silence, a child whispering Dada for the first time. Ethan's journey shows that it's never too late to become the person someone else needs, that even after years of absence, healing can begin with one choice to stay. And Sophie reminds us of the quiet strength it takes to protect love, not by demanding it, but by showing up, over and over again. In a world that often values noise and speed, this story calls us back to stillness, to commitment, to the beauty of rebuilding something from brokenness. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary lives are built not from perfect beginnings, but from the courage to begin again. And maybe, just maybe, the second chance you give becomes the home you've always longed for. Thank you for spending your time with us today. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. Every story we tell is a piece of someone's healing. And with your support, we can keep bringing more light into the world. Until next time, take care and keep believing in second chances.